we're going to start today's program with a conversation with Francis Simisim from Original Pitch Venture Capital. And Francis is at an airport in the Philippines currently. So we're going to learn about a different part of the world, a different ecosystem from this conversation with Francis. Welcome to the program.
Hi, Sharmana. Thank you so much for the introductions, and apologies for where I am today. And I'm sure
no
the background sound
we are
is a bit
very flexible, and we love all these different configurations. People dialing from cars and hotels and airplanes. It's a dynamic, very very dynamic community. So we are very very happy to have you, Francis. So
thank you so much.
Tell us about yourself as well as about Original Pitch Venture Capital. Let's get to know one another.
Sure. So I guess I started my tech career a decade ago when I did my master's and undergraduate in the UK. I studied in Oxford Brookes University. Startups were booming back then in the UK. Came back home. I wanted to do startups, but nobody knew what startups were, and nobody had websites back then. So I started companies of my own, built companies up. Recently exited one company, one of the largest digital, I would say, blog magazine online in the Philippines. And from then on, I started to explore towards, media and advertising. And it's kind of where I started to also look at investments.
Okay. So your core expertise is in media and advertising, and the venture work that you are doing or planning to do, would that have a bias towards the media and advertising style of investments, or are you going to go broader?
It's a bit more to do with B2B as well. I'm very passionate about B2B, how we can help, most of the SMEs, as well as, the larger enterprises to really utilize marketing. Yeah, so it's mostly on those areas that we're focused on, although in our VC firm, we have different partners who bring in a different perspective to the table. Like we had some from fintech, some from, the real estate industry, so we come with different expertise.
Okay, great. So talk about your fund. Is this going to be through a fund structure or more of an angel group? How are you structuring Original Pitch?
So it's a bit more of a mix between a family office as well as an angel group, because we are 5 entrepreneurs who have run, different businesses before, and we wanted to help our fellow entrepreneurs grow, because in the Philippines, the ecosystem is very small, and there is really little, or if not, very small support for tech entrepreneurs specifically, and that's where we want to bring in some expertise and help them out and really get them from where their ideas are all the way up to, a functioning MVP, all the way to a business.
Okay. So I think the, ideal starting point for this exploration into the Filipino tech startup ecosystem with you would be to get a sense of the level of activity, like how many tech entrepreneurs are operating in the Philippines right now?
Right. So actively, I would say the number would be somewhere between 200 to 250. We have a very small tech industry, but we've been trying to push as much as we can on a private level. I mean, the government is trying to push for startup bills as well, but it's still on the very infancy stage. It's very early at this point.
And what are the trends in those 200, 250 companies that are operating? What kinds of businesses are you seeing? I take it that given your role as a VC in a very small ecosystem, you probably know every single one of these companies.
That's right. Yeah. So it's a very small ecosystem. We all know each other, and we try to support each other in whatever way we could.
Yeah.
The industry, initially we started with a lot of copycats. So whatever you guys have in the US and Silicon Valley, we'll have a copy here. But it kind of progressed. This is what I like about it. It matured a bit. So now looking at our own local problems and trying to solve that with technology, and it's starting to, I guess, diversify towards its own direction, where we
Yeah.
start to see more of entrepreneurs focusing on local problems and solving that
Yeah.
with their business.
Okay. Very interesting. So, what is an example of a local problem that is a non-copycat, as you call it? We have a term for that we use that is a little bit more elegant than copycat. We call it concept arbitrage. And frankly, I've been very extensively involved in the Indian startup ecosystem right from the very beginning, and I always encourage the concept arbitrage because it's a very good way for entrepreneurs to learn how to be entrepreneurs, how to build businesses, and get things going. And I think the ecosystems develop well when you have a good critical mass of serial entrepreneurs who are learning, and whether they're succeeding or failing, but they're learning through doing. So I think the copycats or the concept arbitrage businesses have a very important role to play in the development of an ecosystem. So I wouldn't dismiss those.
Sure, I totally agree with you. I mean, that's kind of how we grew up. We learned that,
exactly.
by just copying, it doesn't always work. and that's kind of how we figured it out. So just to give you examples, so one of our partners in the firm, he started a company called Accudine. So Accudine is a receivable financing company. So there's a lot of issues on the SMEs here that, we have a lot of receivables that were never paid. And that really gives a lot of issues for majority of the SMEs, and they had to find a way to get financing, and usually they ended up taking loans, which comes with the collateral of the personal side, and that's kind of like one of the local problems we have. On the other hand, myself, I started a company called Socialite. We did so we put up Wi-Fi in low-income areas, and these are not common in countries like developed countries where you guys have the best infrastructure. Down here, when there is a lack of infrastructure, we're trying to solve things that wouldn't normally seem to be a business, but it's really working out very differently now.
Yeah, very interesting. Okay. Give us a few more examples of interesting companies that you see in the pool that look really promising, that you're hoping are going to break out and turn into larger companies.
Sure. So there's quite a few companies to mention. So one of our key portfolio is Serve Happy Jobs. So this has been started by an entrepreneur who owned a restaurant and had always had an issue of where to source blue-collar jobs and for their restaurants. And she started the whole Serve Happy Jobs to find ways to help the restaurant industry to source talent. And that's been a key issue here. There's also others, like, for example, there's a company called Kumu. It's a live streaming social networking app, and that's also growing, and it's blowing up in the Philippines with 1 million users. So it's kind of becoming more localized these days. It's not like a copy of something abroad. Some concepts may be copied, but not all. Like, the whole concept itself has been copied from different things that solves a very specific local issue.
Okay. And has any company in the ecosystem broken out a little bit further than others, like maybe achieve a $5 million annual revenue level?
Right. So on the 5 million revenue, there's been a few, I would say, that has achieved that. I think the Philippines, because of our currency, very few would reach that status very quickly. That said, though, like, we have had exits. For example, like recently we had an exit of a company called Coins.ph. It's an e-wallet app, fintech app here, and they've exited through Gojek from Indonesia for $75 million. So we do have some success. Not as big as the US, like Unicorn.
Can you talk a bit more about that? What is the business, and who acquired the company? What was the rationale for the acquisition, and how long was the company around before the acquisition? Because I think for nascent ecosystems, exit is a huge issue. So if starting to get exits is going to make a big difference in the maturity of the ecosystem.
Sure. So I believe Coins.ph is an e-wallet app. It's really solving the unbanked. In the Philippines and especially most of the developing countries, the biggest issue is that most of the population have no bank accounts. And one of the key solutions they built was an e-wallet app that enabled people to open an account with them easily without the hassle of documentations and all. And these guys have grew to, last I heard, was 5 million users before they were acquired. So it's one of the big milestones that they've achieved. They were bought by a regional player named Gojek. So for those that don't know, Gojek used to be a ride-hailing app in Indonesia, but has now expanded to be one of the key tech players in the region of Southeast Asia. So these guys are in head-to-head with Grab, and Grab is like Uber, but now they're partners now here in Asia. So Gojek is sort of the other guy competing against Grab, and these guys have just acquired Coins for $75 million.
So that's a very good segue into a bit of the discussion around what's happening in the region, and how does the Filipino ecosystem interface with the rest of the Southeast Asian ecosystem? Where are the partnerships that you're seeing? And this is a very good example of an Indonesian larger player acquiring a company in the Philippines. What else is happening where you have seen interactions, partnerships, meaningful leverage?
Sure. So right now, Philippines is like an island of its own. We kind of are in I describe it like a purgatory. We are raising money on a very small basis, such that our regional VCs wouldn't say that it's part of their ticket size. It's always below their ticket size, so we couldn't raise from them. And if they raise locally, it becomes like a big ticket size, and everyone says it's too expensive. So it's kind of tough right now where we are, and we're still establishing a lot of the regional partners. So we started an event called the Tectonic Summit. It happens every year. It's happening this November this year. And our goal is to really bring in regional investors to come over to the Philippines and see where we are, because most of them have focused on Indonesia and have invested in Indonesia. But Philippines is often overlooked because we're kind of like an island of our own, and it's still very young. So very few investors have come on board here. So that's kind of the problem here. It's really tough to raise capital.
So Francis, what is the awareness or perspective on bootstrapping in your ecosystem? Because for nascent ecosystem, the best way to develop that ecosystem is through bootstrapped entrepreneurship. And once entrepreneurs can reach a certain level of validation and progress using the bootstrapping principle, then raising money, even if they have to go outside of the Philippines, is going to be a lot easier. Maybe raise money from Singapore, raise money from Indonesia. All that is more viable if there is some level of validation. So how much understanding is there in the ecosystem about bootstrapping?
I think bootstrapping is often misunderstood here. Most of them that start a tech startup here kind of see it in the Silicon Valley way, where they have to start raising capital, look for investors, and if they don't raise it, they have to shut down. So it's been a big misconception. So where most of these successful tech entrepreneurs are right now is that they understood that they have to bootstrap their way in. And most of them would kind of go for profitability first before they could jump into growth later on. Once there's enough funding, they can go at it and grow 100% year on year. But right now, most of us have been a bit more conservative, growing a few percentage here and there. But profitability will be the key thing to reach for them to sustain themselves.
Yeah. Well, I think the beauty of bootstrap entrepreneurship is that you have to survive, and the only way you can survive is by being profitable and generating, customer money, basically revenues and profits. Otherwise, you're going to go out of business. The bootstrap businesses tend to need to be profitable very quickly. Otherwise, they're not going to survive. And that's why
Exactly.
actually they become successful, because they can survive. If you die, you will never be successful. You have to survive to succeed.
Exactly. I think that's where you hear the words cockroach startups and how we would survive these situations, because we had to do whatever we could to survive. That's the only way. Investors are not like, there's just a few investors, just a handful of investors around, and not most of them will invest, and that's the tough
Right.
part here.
And most of the ventures are not going to be fundable, so to speak, right? They're, that's part of the problem with a lot of these companies who think that entrepreneurship equals financing, is that most companies don't have the scale path to be, or the TAM to be able to be financed. So that's an awareness that is missing from a lot of these ecosystems. And
Exactly
frankly,
right.
it's something that's missing in Silicon Valley as well. Often, although Silicon Valley is getting a lot more sophisticated in understanding that the bootstrap validation phase is a requirement, not an optional, luxury. Yes, interesting, very interesting. So, anything else that you want to share about the Filipino ecosystem and your work in developing it, how you're going about it, before we jump into the entrepreneur pitch sessions?
Sure. I think for us right now, especially with the tech ecosystem here in the Philippines, what we want to do is really to push in more investors on board. What we found was there's a lot of seed companies who've now really pushed hard, and they're approaching Series A, and a lot of them are raising capital, and it's really tough because they have to fly over to regional cities and countries where we're unknown, and it's tough because investors don't know and investors don't care about the market. Everyone talks about the Philippines, but not everyone commits to the Philippines. So I think soon enough, once we get that support, I think we could really grow the ecosystem. But right now, it's kind of what we have to work on. So that's why we're doing whatever we can. Everyone here does their part.
To get awareness.
And hopefully soon. Exactly. We all do our events. We all do our different, ways of helping. And we're doing whatever we can.
All right. Very good. Well, we wish
Okay.
you all the best. And if you, look at what we are doing, and if there are ways that you would like to collaborate with us, we have lots of different collaborations. You're most welcome to take advantage of the 1Million platform to help grow the Filipino ecosystem as well.
Sure. Yeah, we'd definitely be interested in that.